Okay.
Want me to start? It's about time for Roger to have a new dishwasher.
Yeah, no, I wish it would break down.
What's the subject for today? Now I think I'm unmuted. Good afternoon, everyone. Happy New Year, and welcome to today's edition of Black Health Trust. We are so happy that you chose to spend some time with us this afternoon. As always, there's something happening that we need to discuss, and let's jump right into it. I will turn it over to our founder, Dr. Randall Maxey, who is muted.
Talks about things that we learn to keep ourselves healthy. So we're going to have an eclectic discussion over some of those issues. I was looking at some news article today, and it talked about the neediest cities in the United States. And the top of the list was Detroit. Up near the top was New York City, Los Angeles, some cities in Mississippi, Washington, D.C., and it clearly is all the geographic areas and zip codes where the predominant number of people are of color. And it just highlighted to me that this fight in this country is about the haves and the have-nots, and where resources are going to be given, and how we who are less resourced can make better use of our time, our energy, and keeping our health. So with that in mind, I'd like to go through just a couple of discussion points. And what we've discussed from the beginning, and this is our, 2.5 years we've been doing this, Dr. Neighbor?
Almost 3.
Almost 3. And we've talked about all the things that we can do to be healthy. So we're going to be very liberal about letting people comment. If you and Dr. Walsh would notice who wants to raise their hand and chat. Simon, let's go with the first slide. So we know that a healthy lifestyle is extremely important. And it's important to keep your metabolic rate up. It's important to keep your health and well-being. And we know that whatever you need to do, whether you go to the gym, whether you walk around the block, you have to do something. And all you need is a pair of comfortable shoes and about 30 minutes a day. And I believe the recommendations are that you should do something every day. We used to say do it every other day or 3 times a week, but I, for one, recommend my patients do something every day. So there are many benefits of being active, including better health, a better sense of self, improving your mood, your mental health. That's interesting. Yeah, when I go out and act right, I seem to act better. What do you think about that, Dr. Walks?
I think you are right on point, Dr. Maxey. I also want to add a little something for those of us that live in areas where it may get cold for an extended period of time. In addition to going to the gym, running around the block, or climbing a tree, your second bullet, I was talking with a friend who said, "Oh, I can't get out." I said, "Don't you live in a townhouse?" That's something we have on the East Coast, Dr. Maxey. You guys in LA don't know about that. But it's multiple levels. And I said, "You have 3 levels in your home." He said, "Yeah." I said, "Well, you can walk up and down the stairs for a half an hour, or as much as you can until you can go up and down the stairs for a solid half an hour." And so I think we don't always think about what's right in front of us. It doesn't have to be that it's too cold outside. It doesn't have to be that I can't go out because the neighborhood is not safe. There could be a lot of reasons why being in the house is something to do, but you can walk around in your house, or you can go up and down the stairs in your home.
Yeah, and Dr. Neighborhood, I know every now and then when I talk to you, you're doing this thing called the booty something. I don't know what you call it.
The booty jam.
The booty jam. Like, I try to exercise every day. So I've been running. No, the word's not running. I've been jogging about 2 miles every day. But I found when I do exclusively that and don't do push-ups, don't exercise my thighs for strength and do things that are targeting my body, at my age, they weaken. And so I started using a bicycle. What do you think about overall exercise, and how does that booty rumble you do, what's it called?
Booty jam.
Booty jam, okay.
Now, booty jam is an aerobic dance activity that moves all the parts of your body, despite the name, as well as get your heart rate up, and is one of those balanced activities. You're not focusing on just one part of the body. But I'd like to underscore what you're saying about identifying that sometimes if you're not doing strengthening exercises, you feel it more. It has been recommended that exercise needs to be, just like everything else in life, balanced and well-rounded. So along with the aerobic, the walking around the house, the block, or up and down the stairs, or riding the bike, or doing the treadmill, or whatever it is that you do, that you get your heart rate up and keep it up at a sustained rate for, if you're going to exercise for 30 minutes, then you would warm up for 5 and cool down for 5. So 20.
What exactly is aerobic?
Aerobic exercise is where you're really making the muscles work and utilize the glucose in our bloodstream and as the source of energy. But what I was going to add in, though, was, before I forget the thought, is that strength training is also important, as well as stretching, as well as focus, especially as you get older, focusing on retaining your nimbleness. So I know if we are faithful in getting down on our knees and praying every night, we don't have this issue. And I used to observe my grandfather, who was a carpenter, and I would watch him at night saying his prayers down on his knees. And in fact, he was extremely nimble. So I know getting down on your knees daily is helpful. But if you're not doing that, or in addition to that, don't forget things like yoga and other activities, Tai Chi and other things that will help you to retain your flexibility. So you want weight training, flexibility, getting your heart rate up, and trying to move all the areas of your body.
And Dr. Maxey, let me add to what Dr. Neighbor-Stevens very well said, balance. It's also important to do activities that allow you to maintain a good sense of balance, being able to orient yourself in space effectively. And if you're doing balance, flexibility, strength training, and getting your heart rate up, that's pretty good.
Something I learned from Dick Gregory years ago is when you walk on the sidewalk or cement, that's good. But if you walk on a beach or walk on an uneven surface, on rocks, on gravel, it allows you to keep your proprioception, your sense of balance better, because your ankles get challenged. So that's one thing. I try to walk on some horse trails or just not just paved streets or sidewalks. Simon, let's go to the next slide. So when you guys lead us through this one?
You want to take this one, Dr. Walks, and I'll take the next.
I'm happy to. Healthy lifestyle. Eating healthy is crucial for boosting your metabolism, building strong bones and teeth, and preventing heart disease, as well as many cancers. It's essential for maintaining a healthy weight and for keeping your energy levels up. It's important to have a healthy diet that consists of a variety of fresh produce, whole grains, lean proteins, and low-fat dairy products. Limit your intake of sugary drinks, processed foods, saturated fats, salt, and sugary snacks. There are many healthy food options, such as fresh fruit, nuts, and seeds, low dairy fat products, lean proteins, whole grains.
I would like to make a comment on this one. Don't get frustrated, just like we made the comment about exercise, alternatives and ways of getting your exercise. Don't get frustrated by lack of availability of fresh produce, either because it's not there or because the cost is through the ceiling. Frozen vegetables, especially the ones that are just the plain frozen vegetables, not the ones that are sitting in a bath of sauce, but the plain frozen vegetables are a viable alternative for trying to keep the vegetables in your diet. And as the one who does most of the shopping in the family, I have been aware lately of just unpredictable shortages of things, to the point that I have gotten to the point where I have a list of my ideal things that I want to get, but I'm prepared to have to make substitutions based on the availability in the store.
Excellent. And I have been eating frozen food. I had some wild caught salmon that was frozen in garlic sauce. And it was pretty good. I cooked it. You would have thought I was a chef. So you have to be creative, as Dr. Neighbor-Stephens says. Let's go to the next slide.
Healthy lifestyle. Take a deep breath and relax. How true, how true. The people long ago in the East identified the benefit of deep breathing and relaxation. The indigenous people identified the need for and practice deep breathing and relaxation. And we need to take that practice and put it into our daily routines, beginning in the morning, taking a deep breath, and during the day, periodically, especially if we are sitting most of the day. We need to get up and stretch and take a deep breath. Deep breathing is amazingly effective in helping to relax you and give you at least some momentary relief from your stretching. I noticed on TV this morning, one of our local stations is pushing connecting with people and listening. And I'm not sure what made that station decide to take that on as a project for the year, reminding people every day at every newscast how important it is to listen with ads during the day, spots, talking about connecting with people and listening. I don't know what led to that, but I was so happy to see it. Make sure you're grabbing coffee with a friend every now and then, sending a quick text message or saying hi to someone on the street. I have always been one to smile, and it has never ceased to amaze me, no matter where I am and what the immediate environment may suggest it to be. It's amazing what happens when you look somebody in the eye and smile. It makes that connection. It seems to diffuse situations, and I've always done it, and I highly recommend it. Take a few deep breaths, try and identify what's stressing you out, and work out a way to deal with it. One of my personal beliefs that I came to after the death of my oldest child was that almost nothing that we stress over on a regular basis is usually worth it. And you may not have had that experience in your life, but I would encourage you to just kind of assess when you're getting stressed out, step back and say, does it really make any difference? Is it going to change anything, me stressing about it? Just think about that. Calm down. We're all running around like crazy trying to make things work. We have obstacles in our paths that increase the anxiety around what we're trying to achieve. Take that deep breath and calm down. It just means that you have to let yourself have a little more control, and you don't have to be rushed all the time. It also means that you give yourself grace. And people don't talk about that enough. Stay
Amen.
positive.
So,
Amen. Well
as a
said.
psychiatrist, I'd like your take on this, Dr. Wilkes.
Dr. Maxey, I would like to yield my time to the distinguished psychiatrist, Dr. Lawson, who is on with us this afternoon, and get his take on some of this. While we're getting Dr. Lawson unmuted, I would say that our pastor at church would say during the times that the meet and greet times, he would say, reach out to somebody. It may be the only smile they get this week. It may be the only hug they get this week. So I think connecting with other people can benefit us and certainly can benefit them. Dr. Lawson, could you add to that, please, for us?
I can't add to that at all. I agree. I'm at a post-New Year's party right now, and I'm seeing the value of having people around, supportive people in terms of their health. One of the dangers that we need to watch out for right now is actually not people getting enough nutrition because it's unavailable, but because of fads in terms of diet, where we now have something called a lion diet, where you eat nothing but what lions eat, all the way to super vegetable diets where folks don't get enough protein. We can go on and on and on. The important thing is that eating healthy, naturally, pays off in the long run, and also just basically spending a few minutes of meditating. We did research showing that you can, if you deprive certain amino acids like tryptophan, people will get depressed. We've also did research showing that folks who are isolated and do not have interactions with other people, they also get very despondent. We have lots of naturalistic experiences in which people are in situations, which is correctional situations, which the suicide rates are high because we're deprived of those essential human elements. We learned this thousands of years ago. It helped us during times of slavery, post-slavery. We need to reinstitute those institutions that were lost during the coronavirus that sustained us through those difficult times.
Well, thank you, Dr.
Thank
Lawson.
you. Thank you, Dr. Lawson. I only take issue with one thing Dr. Lawson did, which is he didn't invite any of us to the post New Year's party. And the fact that Dr. Lawson is still partying at 4:30 Eastern time is impressive, sir. That's great.
Very, very
This
good.
is Chicago right there, man.
In fact, Dr. Lawson, I want you to send me that lion diet. And I'm also going to look up the Tyrannosaurus Rex diet. But Barbara, you brought up a point about grace, but it came to me last night at midnight. I'd been reading on my computer a list of all the notable people who died in year 2022. And there are people like great jazz artists, Pharoah Sanders, musicians like one of the guys from Earth, Wind and Fire, Ramsey Lewis and others. And these guys were either contemporary with or younger than God has graced me to be. And I thought about, I'm going to spend my day, some of it on my knees, Dr. Neighbor, some of it with my family, talking about how grateful I am for whatever God has given me, that I still know where I am, mostly who I am, have a reasonable portion of my mental health, Dr. Walks. And I think that being grateful and thanking God for what you have and how he has allowed you to function goes a long way towards being positive. And if I concentrate on the blessings I have, as opposed to the things that I think may be wrong or in my way, I think the blessings I have are far more numerically great. Let's go to the next slide. And I'm going to ask Dr. Sherrod to help us explain this slide. If either Dr. Walks or Dr. Neighbor-Stevens can lead us through this, but
I can lead us through it while we're getting Dr. Sherrod unmuted, Dr. Maxey.
Okay.
Vitamins, vitamin D, metabolizing enzymes and vitamin D receptors are present in many cell types, including various immune cells, such as antigen-presenting cells, T cells, B cells, and monocytes. Data from animals and from human vitamin D supplementation studies have shown beneficial effects of vitamin D on immune function, in particular in the context of autoimmunity.
now what this says to me, Dr. Walks, is that I know we all talk about vitamin D levels, making sure you take enough vitamin D, but rarely, if ever, have we talked on this program about all of the tissues having these little receptors that react to vitamin D. So I know Dr. Sherrod mentioned just last week that your vitamin D levels, what's bathing your body through your blood, is very important. And God wouldn't put all those receptors and all those organs were not important. Is Dr. Sherrod unmuted?
Yes.
Yeah, thank you, Dr. Maxey. I cannot overemphasize the importance of vitamin D. And I think we as physicians are increasing our knowledge on the very important role that it plays in the function of our body. I mean, there's a receptor on every cell, and so it is very important to have good levels. But in spite of that, approximately 97% of the people in the United States are vitamin D deficient. And so for some reason, we're not getting it in our diet. So we actually need to be very conscious of supplementing it. And, you know, since the pandemic, I think the pandemic with COVID has really brought forth a lot of great information. And there are many studies who have documented that vitamin D level may actually determine whether is a major factor in determining whether you live or die with COVID. And these studies were done during the first year when we didn't have any type of known treatment for vitamin D. For COVID.
Can you hold on just one, Simon, go to the next slide. Let her look at this one too.
So vitamin D and immune function. Vitamin D in human health studies models have highlighted immunomodulatory and anti-cancer effects of vitamin D that appear to depend on localized activation of vitamin D. The conclusion is that many non-classical actions of vitamin D are independent of conventional vitamin D endocrinology, and they are more sensitive and therefore more sensitive to variations in vitamin D status. Take it away, Dr. Sherrod.
Yeah, that's my main point, is that we have not been aware or made aware of all of the effects in our training as medical physicians. I can remember in medical school, we only had 1 day on vitamins in general. But as we evolve in this society, we're realizing that the diet is a major factor in health and well-being. As I was mentioning, the studies that were done during the first year of the COVID pandemic on ICU patients, and one of the major factors that they found was that most of the people that were dying the people who had passed away were the people who had low vitamin D or were vitamin D deficient. And that means that your level was less than 30. And then as the pandemic went on, we've gotten data now showing that the best level to have is around 50. Is the most protective level against COVID. I had learned, unfortunately, because I had been had some health challenges, major health challenges that not many physicians have been trained in, even myself, and I had to retrain, get retrained. It's almost like I went to medical school again. But in our support group called KEFCA, which dealt with chronic fatigue syndrome, fibromyalgia, allergies, and candida, it was implied, we were taught that we need to keep our vitamin D level around 80. And so when the pandemic hit, my level was already around 80. But I had a colleague who was working at a county clinic, and they were not even doing the vitamin D levels, but she knew that they should be done. And so she would slip and do the vitamin D levels. And she was telling me that most of the patients that came in with COVID and she did their vitamin D levels, their levels were like 10 and 12, way below 30. So the vitamin D deficiency was there. And I think
it made vitamin D level by going to your doctor, Dr. Sherrod?
You have to ask for them because most doctors do not routinely do them. So I'm recommending to everybody to ask their doctors to do a vitamin D level, because when you talk to patients, they'll say, oh yeah, I'm taking my vitamin D. And so you have to ask the doctor, and then they say, the doctor said the level was normal. Well, I say, you need to know your numbers. It's like Dr. Oz said, you need to know your glucose, cholesterol, blood pressure. You need to know your vitamin D number, because even if it's 30, you're not vitamin D deficient, but you're not high enough to really get good protection for many illness, including COVID, which is the viral infection.
Right, sure, appreciate you. We had Dr. Norris on a few months ago, and he's a vitamin D expert.
Right.
And so what we agreed upon is that when the levels are high for COVID and other respiratory infections in your geographic area, that one of the recommended prescriptions is 50,000 units of vitamin D3 once per week times 4 weeks or 1 month. And then once you've done that, you go down to a dose of between 2,500 and 5,000 a day as a maintenance dose. You mentioned that it's very difficult to have vitamin D toxicity, but this will definitely maintain your levels. Let's go to the next slide, Simon, if you would.
Yeah, let me just comment on that, Dr. Maxey. I think that's a good regimen. You mentioned that on one of the other shows, and I looked it up. But one way, if you have a person who is very deficient, one way to get the level up in 3 days is to take 1,000 units per pound of body weight, for 3 days. And you can get the level up to a functional above 30 in 3 days by doing that.
Excellent.
Before we
Okay.
move on, Dr. Maxey, I would like for us to unmute Dr. Kerwin Dawes, because she just put a comment in the chat, which I find fascinating, because one of the things that is always said is that part of the reason we have low vitamin D levels is the lack of exposure to sun, either because of occupation or climate or whatever. And, assumptions are really dangerous, but I would have assumed that individuals in Jamaica would have had better vitamin D levels. So Dr. Kerwin Dawes, can you make a further comment on what you put in the chat?
Yes, we have to send our vitamin D levels out to the country, to the US, to be tested. So it's a little expensive. So we tend to check some of my patients who I think have immune issues, and a few of my older patients. I have a fair amount of older patients who are what we call returning residents, so they can afford to be checked. And the majority of them are coming back 12 and 15, actually quite low. Interestingly enough, my daughter and some of her friends back from school, and there were some issues with my daughter and some of her friends, and we had them checked abroad. 90% of these 20 and 21-year-olds, both in the US, some are in Europe, and those are in Jamaica that we have checked, have been low. We say in Jamaica they're low because the sun is hot and people cover up and don't go stay in the sun. Everybody covers up and the sun too hot to go in, so they don't. And especially we also check if they can afford it, all our renal failure patients, if they can afford it, and they're also low. So now we tell everybody, we actually, during COVID time, actually had advised everybody to go on vitamin D3. And for our older patients, and now we're pretty much advising everybody because they don't go in the sun.
Excellent. And until you mentioned you were from Jamaica, I was wondering why you had that Jamaican accent, Dr. Dawes. Thank you so much. You know I'm being funny, right?
I know, thank you too. I know. But it's interesting though, we are quite low and we're not even low normal. Those that we're checking are quite low.
So Dr. Walks, I think we need to go on a research trip and figure out what's going on in Jamaica.
Well, I can certainly go and show people how to be out in the sun, Dr. Maxey. I'm happy to go and demonstrate that. So Dr. Maxey, the next slide is about vitamin C. The first bullet, as an antioxidant, vitamin C can help neutralize free radicals that can occur when your immune response gets triggered. Research shows vitamin C can impact how your body deals with respiratory challenges. Vitamin C can also enhance phagocytosis. As a function of the immune system, cells engulf foreign bacteria and microbes, promoting a healthy immune response. That last bullet is what phagocytosis is.
Excellent. So with the past 2 years, 3 years, I prescribe my patients at least 2,000 milligrams a day of vitamin C. And I could go higher, but that seems like a good dose. What do children need, Dr. Nabrant?
We generally recommend that if children have an adequate diet, and let me be careful about that, children are not a homozygous group. I mean, you have to kind of talk about age groups. So this is going to be a very hard comment for me to make because we've got different things in play in different age groups. So starting with the infants who are being breastfed and or formula fed, supplemented, most of the nutrients are present. We do supplement babies with vitamin D. Once children are on table food and eating what their parents are eating for the most part, it really is going to be a reflection of, eating style. And if there's any question, those of you, many of you probably on the call remember a product called Polyvisol, which was a multivitamin supplement that was regularly suggested to parents. Now, let's talk about the adolescents. That's a whole different kettle of fish. The adolescents are very much independent of a lot of their nutritional activity at home. So it is subject to what teens want to eat. We have a huge problem with adolescent obesity now, and it is spilling down into the younger ages, which is a red flag that the nutritional status of our adolescents is nowhere near where we need it to be. We had this conversation and someone was upset that I said that parents should model good eating habits, but I stand by that. I believe the home, and now whether or not it happens and all of the reasons why it doesn't happen, that's another conversation. But children start off in the home, and what they see in the home affects the way they behave. So modeling of good nutritional practices in the home will do a lot towards enhancing the nutritional status of kids. Now, there's some behavioral things, and I don't know how much pediatric psychiatry Dr. Walls engages in, but there's some things that occur early on that and when I would hear it in my practice, I would try to kind of nip it in the bud. When parents would tell me, my child won't eat this, my child won't eat that. I can get my child to sit down and have a meal. All my child wants to eat is potato chips. All my child wants to do is drink milk, or any of those kinds of statements. Those are big red flags that there are not only nutritional issues at play, but there are some behavioral issues at play. I don't know if I don't know if you want to jump into that kettle of fish.
I am happy to jump into the kettle of fish, Dr. Neighbor-Stephens. I think that we are very busy sometimes trying to get children to just behave and just not bother us. But very quickly, let me tell you, we had a family trip to Jamaica many years ago, and I have a Jamaican sister-in-law who had carrot juice for the young people to drink, and they didn't like the carrot juice. And they sat at Auntie Cheryl's breakfast table for 2 hours until they drank their carrot juice. So I think that as parents, we spend a lot of time trying to make sure that children are quiet and don't bother us, and not enough time with Jamaican Auntie Cheryl, who did not mind having everybody stay at the table until they consume their carrot juice. I just think it's a lifestyle issue. We need to, and people can get mad at me. It's okay. That's okay. I'm married. I'm used to people being mad at me. I think that we need to be able to spend time showing our children how to eat well, how to exercise. Don't let me get started on how many hours of screen time children have. Children don't go outside, not because it's too cold or it's not safe, but because they would rather be in front of a screen, whether it's a little screen or a big screen. So no, I think that it's a cultural issue. All of this is a cultural issue, what we eat, how we behave, that we don't talk to people. Seeing a bunch of teenagers sitting together and each of them is on a little screen. They're not talking to each other. They're texting. It's too much. It's too much. I think the parents need to step back in. The adults who are around our children need to at least make a comment about a different way to do things. So I'll leave it there.
To point to what both you and Dr. Neighbor said, I've got this little 1-year-old grandson, and I spend a lot of time with him, and I notice every time I open my mouth to say something, he's a little tape and video recorder for everything I say and do. And even though he's not talking yet, I know he is tape recording exactly how I act and what he sees, what his Gigi does every day, what his mom does. So kids are little sponges. Let's go to the next slide.
Dr. Maxey, before you leave the vitamin C slide, may I just make a few comments about vitamin C? It has played a major role in the rehabilitation of people with chronic fatigue syndrome, fibromyalgia, and allergies, and it's often now they're giving it IV. And I think you should be aware that people with G6PD deficiency have to be very careful about the amount of IV vitamin C that they
How would a
need.
person know they have G6PD deficiency?
There's a blood test for it.
So
they should be tested if they're going to get IV vitamin C infusion, which is included in the Myers cocktail. They need to get a blood level for G6PD.
okay.
So if you're G6PD deficiency, there's a limit on the amount of vitamin C that you can be infused at
Okay, I
once.
guess the question I'm saying, how would the average person know that they're at risk and have that deficiency?
Well, they would have to ask the doctor to test them. Otherwise, you wouldn't know, because you're truly had it too, but didn't know, but when I got tested, I found out. Same thing with the hydroxychloroquine thing and the anti-malarial therapy, prophylaxis for malaria with hydroxychloroquine. You can't take it if you are G6PD deficient. And I didn't know that, but when I was going to Africa back in 1977 and I tried to take hydroxychloroquine, it made me ill. And I decided I cannot take this drug. I will just have to get malaria. And so I went without taking it, not knowing that I was G6PD deficient.
Okay. I think that
I found that out later on. So
relevant question is, I want to know, and you don't have to answer it now, but why would I get the test? I mean, what symptoms would make me ask a doctor? Don't answer that
if
now.
somebody offered you
We don't need-
vitamins.
Hello, we don't need to answer now.
Oh,
But I
okay.
want to talk about that at a different time. This is going to be a very short day, so I don't want to get through. I think we may have one more slide and a couple of points. This is New Year's Day, and I don't want to hold people up too much. Let's go to the next slide. Okay, we're not going to go through these. Dr. Neighbor-Stephens, you had talked about new variants. Simon, can you take these slides down?
Well,
So we know that the job of all of these viruses is to have survival of the fittest. And the way they do that is to create new variants. You want to comment on that, Dr. Neighbor-Stephens?
I don't want to gloat, but I am extremely proud to be able to say that what we hear on national TV and see in national print, for the most part, we've already talked about it on Black Health Trust. And I'm bringing this up because I hope people appreciate the kind of information that we're giving you, because what we're trying to do is to empower you so that you can take care of yourselves. So on any number of occasions over the last 2.5, almost 3 years, we have had national experts talk to us about what viruses do. And viruses, like most living organisms, try to survive. And one of their ways of surviving is to adapt to the environment that they find themselves in. And we've had multiple conversations about one of the problems with people not getting vaccinated and the maintenance of high levels of community viral levels is it provides the kettle for the viruses to mutate. And we have talked about any number of mutations, and you all can run them down. Now, what we predicted would happen has happened. This new variant, and I don't can't find it on my phone, but I think it's QXX or something like that, or XXB. It's a weird combination of letters. And before this is over, I'll try to put it in the chat. The thing that, see, I was concerned when I started reading about the release of the lockdown in China and all of these people who weren't vaccinated, and how, and observing how they just had a explosion of COVID cases. And I'm saying to myself, based on all of the education that has occurred on Black Health Trust, there's going to be a new variant that's going to evolve out of that explosion in China. We better get ready. Little did I know, though, that we have our own homegrown variant now. And it is worrisome that because it has identified, it has incorporated those characteristics that we would least want a virus to have, which is they have the ability to evade our antibodies. And specifically, they seem to be very good at evading the antibodies on the surface of the upper respiratory tract, which is the gateway for COVID. Now, they are working on trying to determine how effective the existing vaccines are, but what they do know is being vaccinated is better and gives you more protection than if you haven't been vaccinated. What they're in the process of trying to determine, as you would expect, is whether or not they need to make alterations in the currently available formulations of vaccines, or whether there will be changes made to protect against this new kind of variant that we will have to fight. And I would say that we will be waiting with bated breath to hear from Dr. Walks and the task force in the near future for advice as to what we need to do next. Except you do know the first thing you need to do. The first thing you need to do is put that mask back on. Please wear your mask.
So Dr. Neighbor-Stevens, the new subvariant of Omicron is named XBB.1.5. And do
XBB.
not ask me why these names are the way they are, why they can't call them number 3, number 4, number 5, but it's XBB.1.5. And
I think it has to do with the strains that are actually involved in the mutation. But thank you so much for helping the girl out.
So what I'd like to do before we close the program is recognize that this is New Year's Day. And I'd like both the medical advisors who are on the phone and our attendees, if anybody has a New Year's expression of something they're grateful for or want to do, we'll give everybody 15 to 20 seconds just to say something quick before we close our program and have last words. You want to pick them, Dr. Walks?
I don't see any hands up, Dr. Maxey. Thad Patterson, and then Juliana Taylor.
20 seconds, people. Let's go.
Go ahead, Thad Patterson, please.
Is he
Okay,
unmuted?
Thad Patterson is unmuted, but not able to respond. So let's go to let's go to Juliana Taylor, please.
Maybe he can put it in the chat.
Yes, I just want to thank God for another year, especially being blessed to be in fairly good health. As we all know, tomorrow is not promised. One of my former classmates from high school, her husband suddenly passed on Christmas Eve. So with no known prior health issues. So again, that brought everything back home for me, that we have to live our lives to the fullest, because again, as we all know, tomorrow's not promised.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome. And again, Happy New Year again to everyone.
Happy New Year.
Anybody
Uh,
else open?
Dr. Clark? We can get Dr. Clark to unmute, please. There we go.
We're just coming up, of course, of a great celebration of Jesus' birthday. And as he gave his life to help us save us, I would give my slogan to say, let us be one to save one in 2023.
Well
Thank you,
said.
Dr. Clark.
Thad Patterson, are you able to share with us? Not yet. Okay. Those are all the hands that are up, Dr. Maxey.
Okay, Dr. Gibson there?
Dr. Gibson is here.
And I noticed Dr.
There
Steiner.
we go. Dr. Gibson, go ahead, sir.
I would like to emphasize the importance of being very, very attentive to the variant movement from one part of the world to the other. It's been stated earlier that actually the Chinese variant is raging throughout that country is not likely to affect this population. I am not quite so sure that that's true. And I agree with Dr. Nabert Stevens is that we really do need to deal with the easiest, most reachable deterrent that we have for the virus, and that's the masking. The masking is a very, very easy thing to do, maybe not psychologically for some people, but it's a very easy step that we can take. Again, of course, the bivalent booster, along with the basic series of vaccinations, is very important. And it's also important for us to recognize that reinfection can lead to the enhanced likelihood of organ failure. So it is a good idea to do whatever you can to protect yourself from infection.
Thank you very much. Let's
And
go to
Dr. Sherrod's hand was back up, Dr. Maxey.
Dr. Sherrod, got a few seconds.
Yeah, I'm grateful for being present, and I want to extend my gratitude to the Black Health Trust for the great job they've done this year and we've done in sharing information and encouraging patients to take responsibility for themselves and their health. Now, I just Googled the 70% of the variants now that's circulating in the United States are BQ1 and BQ1.1, based on this data from the Center for Disease Control, and they are derived from the Omicron variant B5.
Thank you very much,
BA5.
Doctor. Appreciate it. Will the father of a 6'9" son say something?
I just want to say I'm, like every day, I'm grateful to be free, healthy, and alive. I give thanks for all my family. I give thanks for each and every person that comes on here to share their knowledge. One of my favorite quotes that applies to a lot of things that we do here is no one can live long enough to make all the mistakes. So you have to learn from the mistakes of others. We spread knowledge here. So if we don't rely on each other to spread that knowledge around, we're never going to get any progress. So I want to give thanks for everybody who comes here every week for the past almost 3 years to impart their vast amounts of knowledge. I've learned so much. I'm probably the youngest one who comes here on a regular basis, but I learned so much from each and every one of you and your vast amounts of knowledge in doing your part to help our community. And it makes me proud and happy to be a part of something that is empowering our community and empowering people to empower themselves. So I give thanks for that. And I want to say Happy New Year also.
Thank you so much.
Amen.
Final words, Dr. Wilkes?
I actually have something that we call in church a praise report, Dr. Maxey. You know that I'm not my mom's favorite doctor. You are. So I wanted to make sure that I told her favorite doctor that my mom is 90 years old. She's fully vaccinated, got her bivalent booster and everything else. She tested positive for COVID, took her 5 days of Paxlovid, never had any symptoms. Saw her yesterday, and she's still up and walking around. So Dr. Maxey, Mom says hello.
Thank you so much. I love her very much. That's Neighbor Stevens.
Well, I guess my word is I am thankful. I'm thankful for all that the Lord has done for me, and I pray that I can be used.
Amen.
Well, thank you. And next week, our featured speaker is going to be Dr. Roger Mitchell, who was formerly the chief medical examiner for the city of Washington, D.C., is now chairman of pathology at Howard University. He's going to speak on death in custody, of how somebody can come in for a broken taillight on their car and end up dead a few hours later. And in following weeks, we're going to have Dr. Bean, who's agreed to speak. We're going to have Dr. Tony Brown, who's going to speak about brain health and issues. And we're going to have Dr. Ed Chapman and Dr. Lawson back. So we've got an exciting lineup coming. And Dr. Neighbor Stevens, you had another speaker coming too.
We don't have the date. It may very well be beginning of February, but Dr. Rhonda Moore Johnson.
Dr. Rhonda Johnson, the one with the new book?
The one with the new book.
Oh, that's great. That's great. Well, I want to wish everybody a happy and prosperous new year. Thank you, Simon. Thank you, Dr. Neighbor Stevens. Thank you, Dr. Walks. And thanks, Dr. Hines.
Thank you,
Dr.
Dr.
Maxey.
Thank you. Yeah.
Thank you, Simon. Happy New Year, everyone.
Happy
Thank
New
you.
Year.
Happy New Year.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Happy New Year.